Is there anything else you want to get off your chest?
There is one thing I want to get off my chest, Anthony Bruno, and we won't spend a lot of time on it because it doesn't deserve a lot of time. A stat was posted by your boys at Sportsnet the other day on Twitter that caused lots of discussion, and it had to do with Wayne Gretzky. And the stat was that in the 1980s, Wayne Gretzky had more 5-point games than 0-point games. He had 85 5-point games and 74 0-point games. So you have two sides to this. You have the people flying in saying, oh my God, what a stat. Wayne Gretzky was unbelievable. The greatest player, maybe the greatest team athlete we've ever seen. Then you have the other side of people saying, yeah, but he was playing against guys who were like construction workers and should have been like, couldn't even skate backwards. Like you have that take. And to me, can we just acknowledge the greatness of players of the past? The whole thing, and it confuses me. Like, it so confuses me when people do like the comparative thing. Like, oh, Gretzky would be like a junior A player. Yeah, but he played back then. And people point to say him playing against weaker competition than like a McDavid or a Crosby or whatever. But on the flip side, I say Connor McDavid had elite, probably pro level coaching by the age of 10 years old. Do you think Wayne Gretzky got that? No. It was like some guy's dad probably working with him during practice. Equipment. Gretzky using big, thick leather boots, big, thick leather gloves, a wooden stick. That's what he had at the time. So it's not a fair comparison. It's like if Wayne Gretzky had been born now and given these this access that these kids have today with his talent, yeah, he'd still be in the NHL and he'd still be dominating. And also what confuses me is that, do you not see the argument of, well, why was nobody else doing it then? Seriously. It's like, oh, if he's playing against guys who were shit and guys who should have been.
The only other guy who was putting up numbers like that was Lemieux.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. So it's like, what's the whole thing of, it's like, oh, everyone was, or this and that. And the one stat I always show people, or the one topic I always show people in this discussion is my observation anyway is, it's not about comparing the players directly. You can't compare Gretzky to McDavid simply because, again, what was provided to those players positively and negatively. Gretzky played against weaker opposition, but McDavid had better training facilities, nutrition, all that stuff. And again, like, do people think, and it's across the board, if you put Cristiano Ronaldo in like the 80s, he'd score like 1,000 goals. Like, he'd be a total cheat code playing against those guys. It is how it is. But
yeah, that's why it's tough to compare eras.
100%.
And so hard.
And that's why I point to is that, okay, well, that when discussing the greatest athletes of all time, how far ahead of the rest of the pack was that player in his era? Because again, he can only compete against guys in his era. And it was in 1987. If I remember the numbers correctly, Gretzky he won the scoring race and he put up 183 points. Curry was second, his line mate, with 108 points. So he won the scoring race by like a 75% margin. And to that point, Curry probably benefited from playing with Gretzky. And I think Lemieux missed some games that year, so he probably should have been second. But I mean, that's a whole other topic. But people know where I'm going with this. He was that much better than the pack. That much better. It's crazy. It's crazy. And I don't know why people have this like thing about going against athletes of the past. And a great analogy I heard once, it was actually, and bravo, Adam Wilde from the Steve Dangle podcast, because this topic came up when Guy Lafleur passed away. They were talking about, oh, what he pulled off, and he was the best player of the 70s. And you have these losers come in, like trying to not give him credit and take away from it. Adam Wilde said, you have a 1950 Ferrari and you have a 2023 like Nissan Altima. What car is faster and better built? Probably the Altima.
Yeah.
It's better.
In fact, 70 years later with all the technological advancements, right?
So his argument was 1950 Ferrari, 2023 Nissan Altima. Which one's more impressive? The Ferrari's obviously.
Of course,
the Ferrari's more impressive. So that because at the time, what the Ferrari was for vehicles of that time compared to what the Nissan is for vehicles of that time. But anyways, like I said, I didn't want to waste too much time on it. Gretzky's my boy, the love of my life, God country, Wayne Gretzky. I felt the need to express how I felt on this one.
No, I agree with you, Lepore. I think there's been some people that have maybe been a little disrespectful towards Wayne Gretzky, and it happens in all sports, right? We all kind of dismiss some of the things that the greats did 20, 30, 40 years ago, even 50 years ago, because it's like you said, we think, oh, they were playing against accountants and plumbers and firemen, right? It's kind of ridiculous. I love that stat you brought up, that Sportsnet stat that they posted, how he had more 5-point games in the 80s than 0-point games. But the stat that just trumps it all, and this is how I'll end this thing, Wayne Gretzky has more assists than the second leading scorer of all time has points. That's literally all you need to know. He has more assists than Jaromir Jagr, who sits second all time in NHL scoring. Wayne Gretzky has more assists than him. Think about that for a second. If that doesn't show you how far ahead he was of everybody else in that era, I don't know what does.
He got 163 assists in a season. That's the record. Think of a guy now, and again, time different, but like think 163 points. No, 163 assists. It's crazy, man. It's bananas. Absurd. But and I'll finish with this. Like, my question is always when people say, "Oh, well, like who he was playing against, whatever." 4 times Gretzky put up 200 points. 200 points. 200 points. So what? To impress you, he needed to put up what? 300 points? Like, what would be the number that you would have said, like, oh, okay. Like, he scored 92 goals in a season. Yeah, I know it was in the 80s, but what's your, he should have scored 150? Like, he should have had 350 points and 150. Like, come on. Like, that's where it's all just it's ridiculous.
That he could have done or needed to prove. All the records he holds as well. Like, it's absurd. Wayne Gretzky was unbelievable, and he's the GOAT. He's the GOAT. It's as simple as that.
We need Wayne on the podcast.
Yeah, that's next.
Yeah, life goal. Wayne Gretzky on the. It took Spin Chicklets like 10 years to get him. We'll see how long it takes us to get him.
We might be able to get him by 2057 or something like that. Lepore, if we're still doing. If Wayne Gretzky is still around at that point, if we're still around at that point doing this podcast.
Yeah.